Hey there, I thought I would make a quick little video just to show you guys something that I find to be really helpful in Photoshop. I have been using this a lot lately and seem like I'm always doing it, so I just thought it might be a good thing to pass on. Here I have a web page that I've built, and it's a pretty long page. It's like a single page web application, and I would like to be able to convert this into an image that I can either use in my portfolio or send on to a client or whatnot. So when you have these long pages, you might be tempted to try to print the page, print it out as a PDF, which seems like it would be a great solution to use. But the problem is going to be that when you open up your print dialog box, first of all, by default, none of the images that are background images are going to show up. So that is a default setting. Now you can change that by going into the More settings and turning on background images, which will then ensure that those background images are going to print. And this seems like it would be a great solution. The problem is going to be that it's going to split the website into multiple pages. So you can see how I don't really have control where it's cutting the pages. It's just going to kind of like cut them wherever it sees fit. So this is, again, not that optimal. Now I do have the option to scale it down, but my page might become really small and that might not be useful either. So what I like to do is I like to take screen grabs of my web page. Now, when you take a screen grab, you are going to be saving a portion of your screen or the entire screen, and depending on what sort of operating system you're using, it's going to save that to your desktop or to your documents or wherever it is. So you'll need to figure out where your screen grabs are going to be printed. So I'm going to take a screen grab and then I'm going to scroll a bit, and I'm just going to continue to take screen grabs of the entire website. So it is worth pointing out that generally I take a look at where the bottom of the page is. I want that little bit of page to appear when I take my next screenshot. So I want to make sure that whatever text was showing, I'm including that in my next screenshot, because you need to have a little bit of an overlap in order for this to work. So I'll just kind of continue to do my screenshots. You can see that these pictures in the circular shape are right kind of at the bottom of the screen. So I'm just going to ensure that a portion of those appears at the top of the next screen. And I'll just do that throughout the site. I'm just going to speed this up to make it go a little quicker. All right, now that I have all of the screenshots, let's jump into Photoshop and see how we can combine these images to make one big image. So now that I've taken all of the screen grabs, I went ahead and opened them up inside of Photoshop. So I have all my screen grabs open here. And I'm going to start on the top of the page, which happens to be this screen grab. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my canvas size considerably. So I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Size, and I want to create all the new material underneath this one. So I'm going to change the anchor point to the top so that all the new material will be created at the bottom. And I'm just going to increase the height to a really high number. I'll just put 6,000. I'm not sure what it needs to be, but I'm just going to make it really tall. So what I end up with is a document that is very tall, and I'm just going to use my hand tool to kind of focus in on the top part. I'm using my keyboard shortcut of H to get to the hand tool, and then I'll just click so I can see the top portion of my screen. And now that I have that visible, I'm going to go to the next screenshot, and so this is the second scroll. I'm going to select everything, and I'm using the keyboard shortcut of Command or Control A. I'm going to copy, so either Edit Copy or Command or Control C, and then I'm going to go back to the original one and I'll do a Edit Paste or Command or Control V. And now that I have this pasted in, I want to be able to line this up with the existing text. Now this gets a little tricky to line stuff up. I mean, you can kind of eyeball it and get it in there, but chances are it's probably not going to be pixel perfect when you're doing this. So It is possible to go into the layers and adjust the opacity and whatnot, but what I really find to be the easiest way to do something like this is to use the blending modes. And the Photoshop blending modes can be used for all sorts of cool things. There are a ton of blending modes inside of Photoshop, and if you use them, they will change the way the image on top interacts with the image on the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the difference blending mode, which is probably one that you don't use often, but for this sort of work, it is my favorite blending mode. So when I have difference on, if there's an area that has nothing underneath, which is the bottom portion of that screen grab, it just looks normal. But when it sits on top of a layer that has existing content, then what's going to happen is it will subtract the pixels of the base and the blend layer, and the result is always going to be a brightness value. So when you subtract 2 pixels that have the exact same value, the result is going to be black. And you can see that's happening like where we have a white area that's sitting on top of a white area. So now that I'm able to do that, I can take this second layer, which is the second screen grab, and if I use the move tool and I nudge with my arrow keys, so you can use shift arrow to move 10 pixels at a time, or you can just use arrow to move 1 pixel at a time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to nudge until I see complete blackness. And then I know that these images are completely lined up and they're sitting right on top of each other. So now I'll go back to the normal blending mode. And if we look, these are seamless. Now I have a little white strip, and that is a result of me taking the screen grab. I probably just went a little too high up. I don't know if you recall, but I had like a sticky header with the navigation that kind of stuck to the top. So I'm just going to select that and just delete it. And now I have perfect line up. So I'll just scroll down. I'm going to go to that screenshot and then I can just close it. I'm done with it. I'm going to move on to the next one and I'm going to do the same thing. Command A, Control A to select all. I'm going to copy, Command C or Control C. I'm going to go back to the document I'm working on, and then I'll paste with Command V or Control V. So I'm going to need to create this blending mode of difference multiple times. I find it much easier just to use the keyboard shortcut. The keyboard shortcut to scroll through any of the blending modes is Shift plus. So if I have my layer panel open, we can actually see this. And here I have layer 3 selected. If I use Shift plus, it's just going to cycle through the blending modes. So you can go through the blending modes. And if you use Shift minus, it'll go up. So Shift plus is going to take you down through the blending modes, cycle down, and Shift minus is going to take you in the opposite direction. So you could certainly get to difference using that, which is one option. Or the option that I prefer is to just use the keyboard shortcut for difference, which is going to be Option Shift E, and that takes me right to the difference blending mode. You could also, if you're on a Windows machine, you would use Alt Shift E. And now that I have that in there, I could use my move tool to kind of get this down close to where I need it to be. And if you guys recall, when I took the screenshot, I made sure to kind of get a screenshot that had overlapping areas. So now it's completely black. I know they're completely lined up. I want to go back to my normal mode. I'm going to use Option Shift N to get back to normal. And I'll just check to make sure there's nothing I need to remove. I have a little strip right here, just like we did before. So I'll just make a big selection across my entire document and then just hit delete. And that goes away. And now this lines up perfectly. So I'll scroll down and we're just going to continue to do this with the rest of the screenshots. Paste them in. If you do this with the keyboard shortcuts, it actually goes really fast. Option or Alt Shift E. I'll go back to my move tool. I'm using my keyboard shortcut of V to quickly get there. I'll just shift arrow down to get these guys close to where they need to be, and then I can use the arrow key to dial it in. We'll go back to the normal mode, Option or Alt Shift N, and I probably need to get rid of this little top strip again, so I'll select that and just hit delete to delete that. and then they line up, and we'll just continue to do this. So this is a repetitive process if you have a lot of screenshots, obviously. I'm just going to quickly speed through this portion because I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, and then I'll show you the last step of this particular process. Now I've run out of room. I didn't estimate enough vertical space. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to image, canvas size. I'll use that little trick of pushing down, and I'll just increase this. I'm pretty close, so maybe I'll just add another 1,000 pixels to the bottom. And then we just have to get the very last screenshot that I've taken. So I'll go grab that, copy it, and paste it in, and then we'll just do our little trick, Option or Alt-Shift-E to get to the difference mode. I'm going to use my Move tool, and I'm just going to move this down, and then I will go to my arrow keys and just kind of nudge this into place. It is worth mentioning that sometimes you might need to use the right and left arrow keys as well, so you can nudge them into place. So, you know, up and down, right and left, whatever you need to do. Option or Alt-Shift-N to get back to the normal mode, and I'll use my marquee selection just to simply delete this area. The final thing that I'm going to do here is just crop this page so that it matches the size of my screen grabs. And it looks like I might have just a tiny bit of additional space on the right and the left. So I'm just going to very subtly crop in. I don't need the little edge of that so much. And I'll hit Return or Enter to accept that. It looks like something got a little wonky right here. So let me just fix this. I don't know what happened to these guys right here. But let me just fix that layer. Oh, you know what? It looks like that got pasted in twice. So let me just figure out which layer that is, and I'll just delete that. All right, yeah, so layer 7 somehow got duplicated. So let me just zoom out and make sure this looks good. I think it does. All right, perfect. So now I have a representation of my web page, and now I just want to export this as a flat image. A lot of times I use Command Option Shift E, which takes all visible layers and collapses them onto one layer. So now I just have one layer that's kind of all pasted together. You may need to do that if you want to move this into another program or something like that. But if you simply just need to export these out, you would then just go ahead and have them all visible. And if you do export for the web, I'm doing save for the web, so you can access that by going into File, Export, and I'm just going to use the save for the web legacy. You could use the export as, you can use the keyboard shortcuts either way. I like using the save for the web legacy because it does offer you the ability to make a comparison between the file formats. You can kind of move this around if you wanted to look at a different part of the image so that you were making the best decision. And then this first panel shows you your original image. And then you can click on these subsequent panels and you can choose like, okay, here's a Ping 24. It's going to be 8 megabytes, which is pretty big. Here is a JPEG. And if I wanted to save it out as a high compression JPEG, it'll be 1.9 megs. So this image is pretty gigantic, right? It's 1500 by 6800. So it's pretty large. But I can go ahead and I can experiment around with some of my compression settings, choose the one that's best for my needs, and then just go ahead and save this out. And what I'll end up with is a compressed file, and I'm just going to call this Mar Desktop because it's the desktop screenshot of what I'm doing, and I'll save that. And then that's it. Now I have a great looking flat representation of my website, and it's all together in one file. So I just wanted to share with you how you can use the difference blending mode to line things up. I actually use it more often than you'd think and find it to be extremely helpful when I'm trying to align two pieces of artwork to each other, especially if they're of the same subject and I'm just trying to kind of recreate it. I hope you find that helpful. Have a great day.